What's up, Gregory? Do you support Trump?
I do.
Okay. How old are you, Gregory?
I'm 18.
Okay. All right. And you're a columnist, so you do journalism?
Yes, I actually write.
Very interesting. Uh, have you ever written about Donald Trump's declaration of war on American cities or his four violations of the Constitution in the last 8 months, including but not limited to the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 22nd Amendment?
Uh, so, have I written? Can you give me a specific event so I could say if I have or haven't written about that? Because what you referenced is a ideology and not a. Have I written about Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard to different cities in the United States? Yes, I
Well, I
have.
mean, like for instance, like you're a conservative, right? Like conservatives care about the Constitution, like freedoms and liberty, right?
Yeah.
So when he signed Executive Order number 14160 into law, that illegally infringed on the 14th Amendment by trying to ban birthright
Can you
citizenship.
remind me what Executive Order 14160 was?
I was in the middle of it. I got you. It was the one that attempted to illegally ban birthright citizenship for the children born to undocumented immigrants on American soil, even though they have that right per the 14th Amendment. Like that was like
Okay,
blatantly an
so
infringement on the Constitution,
yeah, that's
blatantly
not true.
infringement.
So
Okay.
it's okay. So it's an interesting point that you bring up there. Number one, I was not in favor of that executive order. I was not in favor of Trump declaring it in, and that's number one. But to say that the 14th Amendment protects birthright citizenship for undocumented immigrants on U.S. soil is also a stretch because I don't believe it is up to you to decide that. It is up to Congress to decide that, unless the Supreme Court would rule that would rule that the 14th Amendment protects
Oh,
uh, birthright
so
citizenship for
so
undocumented immigrants, which
they
it did not.
so they did.
No, the Supreme Court did not rule that birthright citizenship is protected for undocumented immigrants in the United
They
States.
actually
So,
did. They actually did. So this
can
was
you refer
U.S.
to me to the case?
Yeah, this was U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark in 1898, I believe. And like most of the
No, that was a different. That was documented immigrants. That was not undocumented
well,
immigrants. It's a completely different case.
if you're going to interrupt me, I won't be able to finish the point.
Sorry, my apologies.
Okay. So I understand that Wong Kim Ark, he wasn't an undocumented immigrant. However, right, the ruling did give birthright citizenship to undocumented immigrants on American soil because it gave us a clear definition of what the portion of the 14th Amendment that's typically debated is and subject to the jurisdiction thereof even means, right? So the Chief Justice of SCOTUS in the U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark case ruled, right, specific guidelines for who doesn't qualify for birthright citizenship. And the Chief Justice, alongside the other SCOTUS judges, gave three specific categories of people that do not qualify for birthright citizenship per the 14th Amendment and the first section of it because they're not subject to the jurisdiction of U.S. law. Those three specific categories were Indigenous Americans, members of militant invading troops from other countries, and foreign diplomats. Now, of
Yes.
course, later Indigenous Americans got birthright citizenship because of federal law, but still yet, undocumented immigrants don't fall under either of those three categories, meaning per the US versus Wong Kim Ark ruling, they do have birthright citizenship. And this was actually like indirectly reaffirmed in 1989 in the Plyer v. Doe SCOTUS case, where undocumented immigrants sued the American government for not giving them free preschool, no, K through 12 education, right? And then SCOTUS inevitably ruled that they actually do get that under the Constitution, particularly because of the Equal Protections Clause of the 14th Amendment, right? You have to like give everybody equal treatment, equal protections, and because our government gives right American children a free education K through 12, well, therefore, because of the Equal Protections Clause, they also have to give it to the children of undocumented immigrants. Why am I bringing this up, right? If it has nothing to do with birthright citizenship, it's because the Equal Protections Clause of the 14th Amendment uses that same language. You're subject to equal protections. You have that right given that you're subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Okay? Right? So, in ruling that they can access the right of equal protections under the 14th Amendment. They are ruling that undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which of course would also affirm that they are subject to the first section of the 14th Amendment, that being birthright citizenship. So considering the U.S. versus Juan Mark case of the 19th century and the Plyer v. Doe case of the 20th century, it becomes incredibly clear that yes, there's case law over 100 years old to justify that undocumented immigrants are subject to birthright citizenship.
Okay, so well, the case in U.S. versus Wonky Mark, just because it specified three different groups that were not subject to not subject to the birthright citizenship clause, does not mean that other groups were not. For example, illegal immigrants necessarily during the I forgot what year, but in the 19th century
It does.
were not. Sorry.
You were wrong. Right, those were the three explicit groups set out by SCOTUS. They basically
No,
said,
no, 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 no,
if
no.
you're
But
not in either of these three explicit groups,
no, they
you
did
have
not. That's
birthright
not.
citizenship.
No. They said
Yeah.
they used them as an example of a groups that would not get birthright citizenship. However, illegal immigrants were not even in existence in the 18th century. There was
You have birthright citizenship.
process in the United States. So therefore, the SCOTUS cannot rule that they were
Wait. So you think in the
legal.
19th century, nobody was in America without any documentation?
It was no one was an illegal immigrant in which the U.S. would be deporting them because they had no jurisdiction in the United States.
Okay. What do you think that section of the 14th Amendment means? Right? Any person born on American soil and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen of the United States of America. I take that statement and subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean just being subject to the laws of the state. What do you take it to mean?
I think I don't think I'm the person to interpret that. I think Congress is the person to interpret that.
No, Congress doesn't interpret the Constitution. That's SCOTUS and courts, right? And by the way, if you just want to like wait on the ruling of courts, right? Like not only do we have like Plyer v. Doe that explicitly ruled undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, but we've also had many federal courts explicitly rule that Donald Trump's executive order was unconstitutional and in violation of the 14th Amendment. You're cooked.
Okay, so SCOTUS once again did not rule. You still haven't shown me a case in which SCOTUS ruled that Donald Trump's or any sort of order that prevented the giving of citizenship to undocumented immigrants. SCOTUS did not rule that
Yeah,
unconstitutional.
and they don't need to for my point to be proven.
Okay, well, if no, of course they have to, because if
No.
they haven't, yeah. So if something is unconstitutional and SCOTUS didn't rule it as unconstitutional, but you're telling me it's unconstitutional, but as of now it's still constitutional.
Unconstitutional things happen all the time that SCOTUS doesn't rule on because they either already have or they just pass it down to some
No.
federal circuit
If
court.
SCOTUS were to rule something that was unconstitutional, and the executive branch or some power of government were to rule or perform it regardless of the SCOTUS's ruling, then there would be further action taken by the Supreme Court. Not
Okay. So if SCOTUS rules something as unconstitutional, then the person continues to do that unconstitutional thing. Sure, like the courts will take action, but this like is completely irrelevant to the debate on if Donald Trump's executive order was unconstitutional. And my incredibly compelling argument that it is unconstitutional because of case law ranging from U.S. versus Juan Mark to SCOTUS case law in U.S. versus Plyer v. Doe in 1989, where they unanimously agreed that yes, undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, as well as a common understanding of what the subject to the jurisdiction thereof means, alongside the univocal rulings of federal courts on this specific executive order. My point is clear. My argument is sound, and this is the take unanimously of like vast majority of all constitutional scholars. Like, where do you think I get the take from? I get it from them.
so don't say the vast majority, because that is false. That is also false. And
No, demonstrate to me any reason to believe that the vast majority of constitutional scholars believe that undocumented immigrants do not qualify for birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment. Go ahead and prove that.
go ahead and prove that. I'm not trying to prove that the vast majority of constitutional lawyers do or do not believe in something. That's a stupid argument. That's proof to me that the vast majority of constitutional scholars believe that. You can't, because there has been no study conducted
Yeah, for sure.
on it.
Yeah, for sure. I can. And me doing that would be like, because I could only maybe name like 3 constitutional scholars that think undocumented immigrants aren't subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and they give no clear definition of why they think that, and they're all pretty disgraced, right? So if I could like only like
What does
really
that
think of
mean?
like
Wait, can
3
you
like
name the 3?
constitutional, if I
Can you
could
name the 3?
if I could like really only think of like 3 constitutional scholars that disagree with that notion, right? That's obviously going to like set the precedent for a very strong inductive case, that like vast majority of them would agree that yes, they do have access to birthright citizenship. Go ahead and unmute. But anyways, like, do you just want to address my argument head on? Right. So my argument that his
sorry.
executive
What do
order
you
was
mean?
unconstitutional has to do with SCOTUS case law, ranging from U.S. versus Wonkamark to Plyer v. Doe. It has to do with circuit and federal case law, ranging from like the federal courts that disputed Donald Trump's executive order when he made it on the issue, and just like the fact that you wouldn't be able to purport to me a
Can you
single
name me
constitutional
3?
argument. One moment.
No,
And the
no.
fact that
First, name me 3 constitutional
and
scholars
one
that agree
moment.
with you.
3
3.
constitutional scholars that agree with me?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Sure. Go. Let me go ahead and hop on Google and look them up. Thank you so much. Constitutional. Oh wait. Do
Lawyers or whatever.
undocumented immigrants. I'm not even gonna look up lawyers that agree with this. I'm just gonna look up do undocumented.
You see your point that you can't say that the vast majority of constitutional scholars agree with something or your argument just because you think so, or just because you don't know the other side. It doesn't it doesn't mean anything. I'm not like
Okay.
saying
Well, the argument. So I was in the middle of trying to find the name of 3 people that agree with me. I wish that you would have allowed me to finish that opportunity, but seemingly you no
No,
longer
please
want me
do.
to do that. And it's not that I
Please do.
don't know
Please
the
do.
other
Go
side. It's
ahead.
that there's not another side. There's not a constitutional argument, right? Like, give me a constitutional
There
argument
is.
right now to demonstrate why exactly undocumented immigrants wouldn't qualify for birthright. Like the children, not even undocumented immigrants, the children of undocumented immigrants born on American soil would not qualify under the first section of the 14th Amendment, given that we know they qualify under the third, that third being equal protections.
Okay, so whoa. Okay, so there's multiple parts. So number one, the case you brought up was what, Plyer v. Doe, right?
Yep.
In that case, education is different than birthright citizenship because for
But
citizenship,
the language of the sections of the 14th Amendment both use that and subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
what do you mean?
Well, like you only get that protection if you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the same way that you only get like birthright citizenship if you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
No,
Right?
well, there's
So
different parts.
obviously, in that Plyer v. Doe
Equal
ruling,
protection clause
they
and the
ruled
birthright
that like
citizenship
undocumented
clause are two
immigrants are
different parts
subject
of
to the
the.
jurisdiction thereof. Okay, like maybe I'm like a step ahead. Okay, like I think that maybe like I need to inform you on the basis of like the argument that the children born to undocumented
Can we
immigrants.
acknowledge that the equal
No,
protection
can
clause
you
and the
stop?
birthright citizenship clause are
my
two
God.
different parts of the Constitution and
Oh
two
my God.
different parts of the 14th Amendment?
So they're 2 different sections of the 14th Amendment. However, the
Yes.
parallel that I'm making is that in order to qualify for equal protections under the 3rd Amendment of the 14th, the 3rd section of the 14th, you have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's what the language of the section says, right? And it is that same language that exists in the first section of the 14th Amendment, that's birthright citizenship, right? That conservatives such as yourself like to hinge on in attempting to argue that undocumented immigrants and their children born on American soil are not subject to birthright citizenship. Like, for instance, like when you're trying to make an argument that undocumented immigrants, the children of undocumented immigrants born on American soil are not citizens, how do you start that argument? You start that argument by reading the first section of the 14th Amendment, reading all people born on this country and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens, and then you dispute that they're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? But like obviously, right, in the Plyer v. Doe case, they ruled that they are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right, because they had to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof in order to qualify for equal rights. But listen, I want to go here because of something that you said earlier that I asked you about that you didn't answer to. Okay? You said, right, that Dean, you cannot possibly say that vast majority of constitutional scholars right, agree with you and disagree with me, right, for the reason being that you don't know the other argument. So give me that other argument. Give me an argument that the
So
children born to undocumented immigrants on American soil are not subject to the first section of the 14th Amendment and do not have a constitutional right to birthright citizenship. Let's hear the fucking argument.
because the Constitution does not say illegal immigrants are subject to the are subject to the birthright citizenship clause.
Wait, does
Nor has
I
the
have a
Supreme Court
question?
ruled.
Does the Constitution say that Gregory is subject to the birthright citizenship clause?
What do you mean? That it tells me this. Wait, are you telling me?
Does the Constitution say Gregory is subject to a right to birthright citizenship?
No,
Does
that's a stupid argument because
exactly.
No,
Oh,
my-
so
my
why?
citizenship
Listen,
has never been questioned because I have been-
why do you right?
Because
still
I'm
have
not
a
an
claim?
illegal immigrant, nor
Listen.
do my parents-
Why do you still have a claim, right, to birthright citizenship, right, per the Constitution, even though the Constitution doesn't explicitly say you do? Like
Because the Supreme Court ruled in favor that I have citizenship, and because my parents are citizens, because I have been born in the United States from parents that are citizens, I am a citizen of the United States. I am the definite.
So the Supreme Court rules on things that are challenged. When was it ever challenged that if like you have citizen parents, you don't have a right to birthright citizenship, and then SCOTUS ruled in favor that the
When
children
was
do?
it challenged?
Don't
When was
pivot.
my-
Don't pivot.
Then,
Just answer my question.
I'm not pivoting. I'm not pivoting. When was it challenged that my citizenship was non-existent, or that because it didn't say someone's name in the Constitution, it's non-existent? That was
Right.
never challenged.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to prove here. Because I just said, Gregory, how do you know that you have a right to birthright citizenship? And then you said it's because SCOTUS ruled it. But SCOTUS will only rule on an issue that's challenged. And then the question to you was, well, when was it challenged that individuals born to two citizen parents had a right to birthright citizenship? And then SCOTUS ruled that they do. Obviously, they've never done that because that issue wasn't challenged outside of Dred Scott, right? Which is, of course, right, going to be the alternative ruling where they ruled that Black Americans do not have birthright citizenship, right? So therefore, when you told me that you know you have a right to birthright citizenship because SCOTUS ruled it as such, you were just making shit up.
No, it's because it has never been questioned. I mean, I don't understand your point.
Oh, so you're saying that there's never been like any like valid question to if the 14th Amendment guarantees you birthright citizenship? So then what is the valid question on if the children of undocumented immigrants born on American soil have a right to birthright citizenship?
So you're asking me to define the difference between me as a person who is born from U.S. citizens than an undocumented immigrant who has come into this country illegally, who does not, who's not supposed to be in this country legally, and being born from illegal parents. You're asking me to define the difference?
Yeah, I'm asking you to give an argument that constitutionally speaking,
Yeah,
the
the
children
difference
born to
is that
undocumented
I-
immigrants, listen to what I'm saying, Gregory, calm down. I'm asking you to give an argument that the children born to undocumented immigrants on American soil are not subject to protections under the 14th for birthright citizenship. You can't do it because there's no valid challenge to it. Okay?
Yes.
Right? Like let's literally read it off together. 14th Amendment. Let's read it off together, Gregory. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Hey, I have a question. Are the children, right, of undocumented immigrants people?
Are you telling me that now all people are subject to the 14th Amendment? Because that would be false.
Okay, right. I don't know why you're not answering my question. I'll ask it again.
No, why are you answering my question? I mean,
Because you're asking me a
you're not the
question.
Supreme Court. It's
in
not
re-
your
hey,
decision
Gregory.
to say
Hey,
whether
Gregory, calm down.
Trump's order
Hey,
is constitutional
hey,
or not.
Gregory, calm down. Okay. The reason I'm not answering your question
I'm calm.
is because you're asking it in response to a question that I asked of you. So we're just going to restart. Once
What's the
again,
question that you asked me? Sorry.
Of course, Gregory. I will happily inform you. Once again, the Constitution says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. All right, sweet. Are the children of undocumented immigrants born on American soil people?
But that would be assuming that all people are subject to the jurisdiction thereof are U.S. citizens, and we
Not
just
at
discussed
all.
how that's not true.
Not at all.
Yes, because
I don't
you're
listen.
assuming.
Just answer my question. Are the children right born to undocumented immigrants on American soil people? Yes or no?
Are diplomats on American soil? Are children from diplomats born on American soil? Are they on American soil?
Fuck.
Yes or no?
I'll answer your question just if it means you'll answer mine. Yes, they're on American soil. Now you answer my question. Are the children, dude? Oh my god. Are the two? Oh my god, I'm losing my shit. Are the children born to undocumented immigrants on American soil people?
If they live in the United States or if they reside in the United States, and yes, obviously.
Wait,
but
do you think that people
before
outside of are people outside of America not people?
No. What? Wait. Just
No.
before we go.
So your pre-qualifier there, if they're born in America or in America, then they're people. No, not at all. They just are people. There's no ums, ands, or buts to it. They're just people. No, I'm actually not going to let you do anything because I'm trying, Gregory. I'm trying to run you through a dialogue tree, and you're not letting me, and it's really frustrating me. Okay, all right. So now that we finally agreed that the children born to undocumented immigrants on American soil are people, let's go ahead and move on to that second criteria. Okay, now that we've agreed they're people, are the children born to undocumented immigrants on American soil born on American soil?
I will answer that. Just give me 1 second. I just want to say thank you because I've been watching you for quite some time, and I know we have disagreements, but I respect you a lot. And I just want to say thank you for everything you have done because we have way too many people that are young who aren't really involved in politics, and it's good that you are, and it's good that you're debating because I've learned a lot from you. So I just want to say thank you from that, and I'm a big fan, even though I disagree with you. So,
thank you. Thank you for your kind.
Yeah, just back to your question about if illegal immigrants born on American soil are born on American soil or on American soil. Yes, they are.
Okay, so now we've agreed that they're people. We've agreed that they're.
I've never disagreed that there are people when I meant
so seemingly like now, right? We only have like one more thing we got to check off here. Are they subject to the jurisdiction thereof?
Yeah, that's up to the Supreme Court to decide.
Wait, what do you think subject to the jurisdiction thereof means? What do we learn from the U.S. versus Awonkemar case?
Well, there's a lot that goes into that because the Supreme Court has ruled. Well, we have to figure out if illegal immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
I'm just simply, we need to figure out what it means to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof first. So what is that?
Well, what's your definition? What do you mean by it?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I think it means, and then you'll tell me what you think it means. I think it means being subject to U.S. law.
I let me think. I agree with you. No. Actually, I disagree. I think subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Exhaustively subject to the U.S. law. What do you think it means?
What do you mean by exhaustively?
Like all laws are applicable. All applicable laws are applicable. But no, I interrupted you there. You're about to say what you think it means. So what do you think it means?
Yeah, I think it means that the United States has a responsibility to
To do what?
how do I word it? Let me think. Has a responsibility for you, so you have the same rights, you have the same liberties as a U.S. citizen, or you have liberties and all of the liberties that a U.S. citizen has, or most of them are applicable to you if you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Why are people saying I'm 17? I was 17 last year.
Okay,
Sorry.
What year were you born in?
I was born in 2007.
Okay.
I turned 17 in April. 18 in April, my apologies.
Okay, so you're saying having all the same rights as a citizen?
Yeah, well,
Can you tell me
the Constitution?
Could you tell me how
First
you're
Amendment,
inferring that from the statement and subject to the jurisdiction thereof?
Well, how are you inferring the fact that the subject to the jurisdiction thereof means that you are? The U.S. law is applicable to you.
I'll tell you if you tell me.
Okay, so how am I inferring? Because there's nothing to tell me that I mean, that's just what makes sense. What do you mean? I,
Well, like
I,
I'm asking you to explain how that makes sense.
because the ruling was about a citizen, a
Well,
clause in.
we're not talking about a ruling. We're talking about your interpretation of 5 words in the 14th Amendment of the American Constitution and what you think it means. I asked you what you think it means, and then you
Because
said possessing
the
all the same liberties as American citizens. And now I'm just simply asking you to explain why you think it means that.
yeah, because the what the 14th Amendment does, the Equal Protection Clause, which states that
The Equal Protections Clause. What is equal?
just listen.
What does the Equal Protections Clause have to do with what the subject to the jurisdiction thereof means?
Because it discusses the ability or the prevention of a state. The Equal Protection Clause states that a state shall not deprive anyone of life, liberty, and property,
Oh,
which is what is protected.
oh, so it's like if you have like those equal protections, right? Then you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that
Then what's the relevance of the Equal Protections Clause?
wait. No. You can still have
Why did you just bring up the Equal Protections Clause? What was the relevance of that?
because it's proving my point in which in the equals protection clause what it does is it protects the life, liberty, or property. And if you do, if you are if the life, liberty, and property of your if the life, liberty, and property are protected, then you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So I guess, I mean, maybe yes, I do believe illegal immigrants are protected under the Equal Protections Clause. So, what's the argument there?
Was that clear to anyone?
Illegal immigrants are protected by the Equal Protection Clause. So yes.
What does that have to do with my
No,
like
what I'm saying is
request of
that
you
life,
to
liberty, or
explain
property,
like your
life, liberty,
inference
or
of what
property.
subject to the jurisdiction thereof means?
I just explained to you if you are under the law, if American law protects your right to life, liberty, or property, if that right is protected, if the United States has a responsibility to uphold and protect that law for you.
Okay. Well, it seems like SCOTUS agreed that they have an obligation to uphold and protect the rights of undocumented immigrants, Plyer v. Doe. Does that mean that undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof?
No, but it doesn't.
How so?
You don't. You can still be subject to the jurisdiction
God.
thereof without being a citizen. For example, let me just give you an example.
Like
If a foreign
undocumented immigrants, because like the state has an obligation to uphold their equal treatment per Plyer v. Doe.
wait, sorry, can you repeat what you just said?
Like undocumented immigrants would be an example of somebody that's subject to the jurisdiction thereof that's not a citizen. The reason being that the state has an obligation to uphold their equal treatment per the ruling of Plyer v. Doe.
Yeah, but Plyer veto doesn't
Yeah.
uphold the equal protections clause in its entirety to illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants are not given the same.
So it does
The
uphold.
same.
It does uphold the clause in its entirety.
No, it does not, because then that would mean that illegal immigrants have to go through the entirety of due process in order to get deported, which they are not.
So they actually do have a right to due process because of the
They
equal
do
protections
not
clause.
have a right to the entirety of the due process.
To its constitutional extent, they technically do.
What do you mean?
You're talking about limited due process, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, SCOTUS ruled in 2021 that limited due process doesn't violate the due process segment of the 14th Amendment, right? So they are entirely protected by the right to due process under the American Constitution, right? It just is so. It's just is so yet the case that the incredibly conservative Supreme Court ruled that limited due process
No. Don't
is
say
not a
incredibly.
breach.
Don't say incredibly.
Is not a breach of like their right to due
But
process.
so, do you think that a illegal immigrant has the same exact process of due process than a citizen?
Well, they have
Do
the
they have
same
similar?
exact protection under the due process clause of the 14th Amendment as
No.
citizens.
But what do you mean? But the process is different. So if I have if I have
Wait. I'm
protect-
going to repeat this. So I understand that limited due process was passed by under like the Clinton administration in the 90s. However, right, SCOTUS ruled that what they passed, that limited due process, right, is still yet an actualization of the total protection under the 14th Amendment. So, like, for instance, right, if our government wanted to give limited due process to a citizen, that would technically be constitutional.
What? Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
They're just
So
calling it limited due process. It's not, but in the eyes of SCOTUS, in their ruling on the Constitution, it's not actually limiting their 14th Amendment right to due process.
no, because of no, it's the right
Oh
that
my God.
the not the Supreme Court, excuse me. It's because citizens and
Did you know that SCOTUS has actually ruled what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means?
uh, I would assume it has. Okay, what's the point?
Yeah, so this is coming from a footnote in the Wonkamart case. Quote unquote, impossible to construe the words subject to the jurisdiction thereof in the opening sentence of the 14th Amendment as less comprehensive than the words, quote unquote, within its jurisdiction. Okay? In concluding sentence of the same section, or to hold that persons, quote unquote, within the jurisdiction of one of the states of the Union are not, quote unquote, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So all that they concluded, right, is that they are within the jurisdiction of the United States of America. So can you agree that when an undocumented immigrant is in America, they are within the
That's not what
jurisdiction of the
that's not what
country?
you just said though, because that would mean that's the assumption that a foreign diplomat, which the Wonka case specifically says is not the same. A foreign diplomat would still be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So being
Okay.
subject to the wait,
No,
just
no,
listen.
they're not because of what
Being
Justice
subject.
Gray. You're wrong because of what Justice Gray said. Okay, all right, you're wrong, right? Because Gray said, right, that the jurisdiction, right, is the protection and consequently subject to the laws, right? And like foreign diplomats don't have that, right? Because they have what's called diplomatic immunity.
I understand, but
Hey,
that's not.
Matt, how do I explain the Constitution to somebody that just denies it?
Okay, I think we're getting kind of hung up here. So the you can read Wong in a way that says that when applied to Wong Kim Ark, that it applies to other people. But I think what you're missing is that in the footnote, because in Plyer, they did not directly address the meaning of the jurisdiction, but they clarified in a footnote that they're taking the meaning directly from Wong, which is and that's what Dean gave you, because Justice Gray in Wong gave the definition and the meaning of what subject to the jurisdiction thereof actually means. So that's why when Dean read the footnote, he says Justice Gray is point blank saying that if you apply a stringent definition of what this means, you're excluding not only those born outside, but you're going to exclude those of those who are white also, because many who are Irish, Italian, and else would not be citizens if you applied the rule thereof. That's why he says,
Right.
and he gives a clear definition of what it means, which is what Dean gave you.
Right. And then in the Plyer v. Doe case, as Matt just pointed out, the justices were like, well, in order for us to determine if undocumented immigrants have a right to equal protection, right, under the Equal Protections Clause, they had to understand what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means, as that phrase is also implemented within the Equal Protections Clause. And then SCOTUS was like, well, we actually already have precedent set forth for what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means. They pointed it back to U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark, and then they ruled that, well, the interpretation of what subject to the jurisdiction thereof even means from the U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark case does apply to undocumented immigrants in America, and that's where they got their ruling from, that they have equal protections. So do you see here how there actually is SCOTUS case law to definitively prove, right, that in accordance with the current interpretation of the 14th Amendment and what the subject to the jurisdiction thereof means, it very specifically applies to undocumented immigrants. And that was an intentional ruling that SCOTUS made in in Plyer v. Doe.
So what you're saying is that under what you're saying, the Equal Protection Clause would mean that everyone who is under the Equal Protection Clause and is automatically under the Citizenship Clause. So if you're under the Equal Protection Clause, you're under the Citizenship Clause, right?
What I'm saying is that you do meet the third and final criteria to be guaranteed birthright citizenship.
What do you mean?
That you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, meaning that SCOTUS has ruled you meet that third criteria to get access
Yeah,
to
but you don't
birthright
need to be.
citizenship. Like there's three criteria to get access to birthright citizenship. You got to be a person, you got to be born in America, and you have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Plier veto proves that undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and you already agreed with me earlier that they're people born in America, which means they meet all three criteria in order to gain access to a right to birthright citizenship. That's what I'm saying. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand, but
Do you disagree?
once, yes, I disagree.
What particular part do you disagree with?
That
Do you
if
disagree
you
with
were
that
born
Plier
in
veto?
America,
So
you are
do you disagree that Plier veto ruled undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Do you disagree with that? Yes or
yes, because the Equal Protection Clause and the Birthright Citizenship Clause are completely different, and if you are
no? Okay.
subject to the,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. What's one similarity between the Equal Protections Clause and the Birthright Citizenship Clause? Is that in both clauses, in order to be protected by them, you have to be you have to be warrant to this and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Can you agree?
wait, sorry.
Can you agree that in order to be protected by the Equal Protections Clause, you have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof?
No.
You don't agree
no.
to that?
No, I do not.
Matt, is that not what Plier veto ruled in their footnotes, right? Is that they
Wait,
are
hold
subject
on.
to the jurisdiction
He's
thereof?
saying
No,
that the
if you are
protection
within a
clause does not
jurisdiction,
apply
it's
to
different than being
those.
subject to the jurisdiction. They're two different things.
Sorry, please say that over again.
If you are within a jurisdiction, it's different than being subject to the jurisdiction. What the Equal Protection Clause does is it protects you if you are within a jurisdiction. Therefore, it is much broader than the Birthright Citizenship Clause, which protects you if you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Yes. Okay. So, how are you applying that back to the very first clause? That's what we're talking about. Whether or not the person who is subject to the jurisdiction actually gets birthright citizenship. How does that relate to the equal protection?
No, yeah, what I'm saying
in
is
the
that if you
footnotes
were,
of the in the footnotes of the Plier veto case, they pointed back to U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark's ruling on what it means to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof in making their ruling to understand what that statement means.
so you're telling, oh, okay, continue. What did they say? So they said that subject to the jurisdiction thereof means that you're on U.S. land? Is that what they said?
Well, I mean, I've already given you the description, like the literal quotes from U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark.
Yeah,
to
and
understand what, it
what
means
that
to be,
showed is
what,
that
what it
even the
means to
Supreme
be,
Court didn't define it. The
what it
Supreme Court,
means to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? And how they set out like three criteria, right, for who is and who is not eligible for it, right? And then that was later referenced by Plier v. Doe to determine that undocumented immigrants have a right to equal treatment, right? And now you are saying that there's a difference to be within the jurisdiction and subject to. So what does it mean to be subject to the jurisdiction? What does that mean to you?
it's not something that I can answer because the Supreme Court hasn't answered it either.
Wait. So you don't know what
Different.
it means? So then how do you know that you're subject to it?
Okay.
How do you, if you don't know what it means to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof, then how do you know that you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof and therefore have a right to birthright citizenship?
Because I have a citizenship.
Because you have citizenship. Okay, well, how do you know, right, that you were not like given that citizenship and like out of whack and not in alignment with the 14th Amendment? How do you know that they didn't get it wrong in granting you citizenship? Like, how do you know that the Constitution truly guarantees that to you and the systems in which granted that citizenship to you weren't wrong?
Because the Constitution, according to its framers, when they created the 14th Amendment, or when the 14th Amendment was created, there was no question whether a U.S. citizen who was born from two citizen parents were given U.S. citizenship. This was not a question. This was obvious.
So you're basically saying,
if my
like,
citizenship
whatever,
is being questioned,
you're basically
my
saying
citizenship isn't
you
being
don't.
questioned. It's
You're,
the
you're,
que-
you're
it's the
basically
citizen-
saying that you don't know what it means to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof, but you just know that you are. Like, regardless of what it means, you don't know what it means. You just know that you are.
Also, Dean, by the way,
You don't know what
his
subject to
whole-
the jurisdiction thereof means either.
No, actually we do, because as Dean said, Justice Gray in Wong gave the definition. He said, quote, impossible to construe the words subject to the jurisdiction thereof in the opening sentence as less comprehensive than the words within a jurisdiction in the concluding sentence of the same section, or to hold that persons within the jurisdiction of one of the states are not in the same subject to that jurisdiction, meaning that they are the same. Justice Gray says they are the same.
And that's why Plyer v. Doe referenced back to it.
Yes, exactly. Because
There you go.
in Plyer, they said that the state of Texas cannot discriminate to children of undocumented immigrants because, based on that text, they are within the jurisdiction and subject to it thereof.
Boom, there you go. Yes, there you go. All right. Yeah, you're cooked now, Gregory. Okay, so Plyer v. Doe determined that within the jurisdiction means the same thing as subject to the jurisdiction because the footnotes of Chief Justice, what's his name, Gray, right, from the U.S. versus Wong-Kim-Ark case in 1898. So, okay, right, we don't really know, right, apparently, according to you, we don't know what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means. We don't know what within the jurisdiction thereof means, but we do know that they mean the same thing in accordance with interpretations set forth by Plyer v. Doe, referencing back to Justice Gray's conclusion from U.S. versus Wong-Kim-Ark.
Yeah. So I just want to find the footnote just so I could read it because I'm a little.
Footnote 10.
Oh my god, dude. What's up with the debates tonight? They're different. They're different than they usually are.
It's that kind of night.
I guess so. I'm tired. I'll keep going though.
I bet.
I mean, I'm definitely like, I'm having to really get into the nitty gritty, and then I got to repeat the nitty gritty like around 30 times. But what now, Greg? Where do you go from here? Now that we understand SCOTUS has ruled these two things mean the same thing.
I still don't agree that SCOTUS has ruled that within its jurisdiction and subject to its jurisdiction.
Okay, well then, so you're denying the footnotes from Justice Gray. Why?
No. I'm gonna just let me find it first because I have never seen that. Just let me find it and then I'll go right back.
Okay, while you're doing that, let me thank Fran. Thank you so much for the $15 over on Venmo. Fran with the $15 says, "Thank you for being so patient with some very misinformed and clueless people. You're a better person than me." Thank you, Fran. Show some love to Fran down below for the $15. I'm trying my best to be patient. I'm kind of like failing a little bit. It's all right though. As well as Rihanna, thank you so much for the $25 over on Venmo. Show some love to Rihanna down below in that chat. Rihanna says, "Hey Dean, I went to my first ever protest today. Unfortunately, my friends were too nervous to go with me, so I went on my own. I was terrified because I'm in a relatively conservative town, but the turnout was awesome and it was an amazing experience." Rihanna, same here. I'm also in a very conservative town, and the turnout was huge, fucking huge. It's insane. It really makes you think a lot higher of those around you sometimes. Thank you for the $25. As well as Serenity, thank you so much for the $10 over on Venmo. Appreciate you for the love, Serenity. Madeline with the $10 says, "This guy's insufferable. Birthright citizenship is one of the least gray areas of the law coming from a lawyer." Yeah, it's not gray at all. As well as Angel. Thank you so much for the $20 over on Venmo. Show some love to Angel Double. Angel says, "Can I just say you shouldn't have gone live tonight? Not because I don't enjoy being able to watch your content, but just looking at your eyes, I could tell you're tired. Take care of yourself first." You know what? So I was actually looking at my eyes on the phone, and I agree. I do look like really tired.
Yeah.
Almost like my eyes are like starting to like go gray or something. I don't know. Like you could tell that I'm really fucking tired. But no, listen, I love what I do, and I wanted to be able to come on here and try to change some minds. As well as Hannah, thank you for the $10 over on PayPal. Abigail with a 2 and Jacqueline with a 10. As well as Lena, thank you so much for the $20 over on Venmo. Lena with a $20. Let's get 200 Lena W's. Says, "Have you seen the Trump reposts with Harry Sisson in it? What a man child?" No, I haven't seen it. I'll have to check it out.
Sorry, Dean, I didn't interrupt you.
No, I'm done. Go ahead, man.
Okay, and and thank you to David also. Thank you, David, for the $100. I don't know what the fuck I did for that, but thank you, David, and thank you for the very kind message too. I really do appreciate you. Thank you, David, so much.
Huge W.
Yeah, thank you, David. I really appreciate it. Okay, Real, did you find the quote?
Okay, so yeah, the ruling though also says that it's universal and the 14th Amendment provisions are applicable without regard to any differences of race, color, or nationality. So that is implying that all people get access to the Equal Protections Clause.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that would go against Wong Kim Ark because
No. Wong Kim Ark only settles the case of the birthright citizenship clause. It doesn't settle the case about equal protection clause. They are separate clauses for a reason. All that Justice Gray is doing is settling
So
what the
they're
meaning
different.
of
They are
jurisdiction is.
they are subject to, or the people who are subject to them.
Yes,
are
exactly.
different
Because
groups.
what the court does in Plyer is say, based on what Justice Gray gave, which is a very detailed analysis of the meaning of the word or of that phrase, they say, based on that, we're going to apply that also to the equal protection clause.
Wait, sorry. Can you repeat what you just said?
Sure. They say in Plyer that because Justice Gray, as an example, gave such a detailed analysis of the phrase, right? Like it, in Wong, he gave a very detailed case about it. They say we're going to apply that to what it means to be within the jurisdiction.
So what do you mean? Are you telling me that he is saying that within its jurisdiction and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are the same, and
Yes,
therefore
yes.
but
Because
then
in paragraph
again,
74 of Wong, he says, quote, "It is impossible to construe the words subject to the jurisdiction thereof in the opening sentence of the 14th Amendment as less comprehensive than the words within its jurisdiction that is found in the concluding sentence of the same section. Therefore, Therefore, to hold that persons within the jurisdiction of one of the states of the Union are not also subject subject to the jurisdiction thereof."
What
So
now,
he's saying
GPT
that they're
Greg?
the same.
What now, GPT Greg?
can you read the last part of the quote again?
Sure. So it is impossible to construe the words subject to the jurisdiction thereof in the opening sentence as less comprehensive than the words within its jurisdiction in the concluding sentence of the same section, or to hold that persons within the jurisdiction of the states of the Union are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
But then that would mean that if you are subject to the jurisdiction, then you are within its jurisdiction. So they're the same thing. That's what it's saying.
Yes, exactly.
So
That's what Justice Gray says. Justice Gray says that being subject to the jurisdiction
So why
is the
doesn't-
same as being within the jurisdiction.
but
It
we
is
just
not
went
less
over-
comprehensive. It is not less or better than the other.
But we just went over how diplomats are not subject to the jurisdiction.
By the way, Gray was one of the justices that made that ruling, right? And
Yeah,
Gray's justification
Gray
there
did, yeah.
would be that they're not fully within the jurisdiction, which is true.
Wait, sorry?
Yeah, so Justice Gray's justification there would be that they're not fully
Justification on
subject.
what?
That they're not fully subject to the jurisdiction thereof because they're not fully within the jurisdiction thereof.
What do you mean they're not fully within the jurisdiction thereof?
Like that would be the justification for the notion that subject to the jurisdiction thereof can be interchangeable within the jurisdiction thereof, while like still not giving diplomats birthright citizenship by like arguing that they're not fully within the jurisdiction thereof.
How are they not within the jurisdiction thereof, though?
Go ask Justice Gray. Go ask the SCOTUS.
No,
Wait,
but
hold on.
if they're not
If you're
interchangeable,
talking about diplomats,
if they're not
right? If you're
interchangeable,
talking about diplomats.
no,
Diplo-
but they can't mean the same thing.
No, they are.
They
Justice
are.
Gray says
Yeah, we
that-
just gave you
that the
interpretation
difference-
from SCOTUS
but
to show that there's no
diplomats are
difference.
protected under the equal.
No, that's a limitation of Congress because in the 14th Amendment and in the actual discussions, they limit that by saying that diplomats, by the very job, right, are subject to a king or to like some other country. By being a diplomat, you are by definition subject to somebody else.
Yeah, but you're still within its jurisdiction because the Equal Protections Clause protects, let's say, children of diplomats.
Yes, here in the United States, but we make an exemption for that because we say that because Congress explicitly said that
No,
that those do what?
They're different then. If one
it's like the same with exemption.
with exemption? Is that what you're saying? So it's the same with
Congress
exemption?
gave yes, Congress
That's
gave
not what we're saying. That's what SCOTUS said. Go ahead, Matt.
exemptions to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Oh, so
I don't
SCOTUS-
know why you think that like you're debating us. You're just literally debating the Supreme Court.
No, I'm not.
Yes,
You're telling
you are.
me that something means something. Just in one case, it doesn't mean the same thing, and in another case, it does.
It
That's what you're
always
telling me.
we're saying that it always means this, right? Right? And even though it always means this, they make exemptions for this, and they make those exemptions explicit.
But what is to tell that illegal immigrants can't be a part of those exemptions?
Because are they foreign diplomats? No. Are
No,
they
because
members?
they
Are they
haven't- they
members
haven't
of
been-
militant invading forces from other countries?
No, they're not in it
So
because
therefore,
they
they're not
haven't been-
within those exemptions.
Okay, so what if the Supreme Court rules that illegal immigrants are within those exemptions?
Okay, then it would be constitutional. But until they make that ruling, it's unconstitutional.
No, because
Yes!
we don't know if illegal.
Yes!
We don't know if
Oh my
illegal
God!
immigrants.
Yes,
are,
we do know because once again, right? Once again, for the last time, GPT Greg, you're getting on my fucking nerves. Oh my God, you're getting on my nerves. They said subject to the jurisdiction thereof means within the jurisdiction, right? Can't be more comprehensive than that. That's what
Yeah.
Justice Gray said, right?
Dean, that's the important part, though, right? I'm sorry, no, but that's the important part. Gray is saying that one is not less comprehensive than the other.
Right.
That's the main point, right? He's saying that because in Wong, they're saying that those are two separate things and that one is less than the other. Gray is saying, no, they're not. They may not mean the exact same thing, but they're not less than the other. So you cannot consider one to be lesser than. That's his main point.
What do you mean lesser than?
Okay, because to say...
Oh,
go
also,
ahead.
they don't have equal protection. They have diplomatic
they?
immunity, which gives them a higher level of protection. Oh my God! Wow! Foreign diplomats are not subject to the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, right? Because of their diplomatic immunity, they actually have a higher, unequal level of protection.
Yeah, and Dean, do you know why they are not given equal protection? It's because they are not subject to the jurisdiction thereof,
Yeah.
and therefore they are not within the jurisdiction.
And therefore, that's what makes it legal to give them diplomatic immunity. Okay,
Exactly, because we
right?
provide it to them because we know that the Constitution does not grant it to them.
Right.
So we give them something extra.
Right. Think about it this way. Think about it this way, Greg. Would it be constitutional for like Trump to sign an executive order into law tomorrow saying that you could break like 90% of laws and be exempt from all punishment? No, that would be ruled as unconstitutional because
No,
now
but-
all of a
but
sudden you
they're
are
not-
being
they're
treated
not subject to
unequally
the equal
under the
protection clause
equal
because they
protection.
don't have
One second.
protection.
One second. Stop
not
it. Stop.
because-
Stop it. Stop talking, Greg. Would it be constitutional for like SCOTUS to rule tomorrow that like you or like a group of people, like white people, right, are like exempt from like any punishment and have immunity from 90% of crimes? Would that be constitutional?
That white people have immunity to 90% of crimes?
Right. Would that be constitutional?
If President Trump signed an order that white people had exemptions to
Would
90%
that
of
yes?
crimes,
Would that be constitutional?
I can't imagine it being constitutional.
No, it would be unconstitutional because it would breach like a lot. But one of the parts of the Constitution that it would breach would be the Equal Protections Clause, right? Because now all of a sudden you are unequally treating white people differently than non-white people, correct?
Yes, based off race.
So then why is it constitutional to unequally treat foreign diplomats from non-foreign diplomats? It's because the Equal Protections Clause doesn't apply to them. Because
But
they're
not-
not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and because of Justice Gray's ruling in U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark that it's not more or less comprehensive than within the jurisdiction thereof, therefore they're not within the jurisdiction thereof either, meaning they don't have equal protections. And because of that, Congress gave them diplomatic immunity. Get pushed!
What? Okay, so no, because that would mean that the federal that okay, so let's say that foreign diplomats previously had protection under the law, right? The 14th Amendment, they had equal protection. Now Donald Trump, let's say, signs it. So as you said, now they have even more.
Sorry, I just had to cut you off. Amy in the YouTube chat says this is the most boring conversation I've ever heard from Dean. Yeah, yeah.
Law can be boring, you know.
Yeah, if unless you like really care about the nitty gritty of law and constitutional scholarship, this is gonna be boring as fuck. I'm hopefully gonna be done with this soon. Do you just have any like refutation of me absolutely pushing you there? By the way, great team we're making here, Matt. This motherfucker is getting absolutely destroyed.
Thanks, Dean.
Yeah. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry, I'm just trying to make myself a little bit less dead inside.
So sorry.
Well, I feel dead inside. This conversation's very killing.
Okay, so where was I? Okay, the reason why foreign diplomats are not subject or are not subject to the Equals Protection Clause doesn't necessarily mean it, or is not because of the is not because of the fact that they are within its jurisdiction or not within its jurisdiction. So just because they're not,
then why are they not subject to equal protections?
but I don't know. I actually don't know. I would have to research that. However, it doesn't mean that it's because they are not within its jurisdiction. Because to be within its jurisdiction, no matter who you are subject to the Equal Protection Clause protects you.
Right.
So,
but they're not within.
No, because they are
the jurisdiction.
Title 18, I believe, is a specific provision that subjects foreign diplomats to a different code.
Different code? What do you mean? Are you saying the Constitution?
A different law. That's
what are you,
higher.
What are you saying? I'm confused.
No, the justification for foreign diplomats not being subject to the 14th Amendment, or specifically the Equal Protections Clause, is not because they are not within its jurisdiction. That's not why.
And then what's the reason?
Well, what's to tell you that that is the reason?
Because
are foreign diplomats not within its jurisdiction, or foreign diplomats not within?
Because
the United States?
That's the only reason they wouldn't be subject to it. I mean, like, what's another possible reason?
I don't know. I would have to research into that.
Exactly.
But
I mean,
why is that?
I'm reading this from Wong, and I think that in Wong, Gray cites the fact that in the history and tradition of the country, that he says that it has never been the case to deny someone the right of citizenship to a native-born children of foreign white parents that are not also in the diplomatic service of their own country. So he's saying that outside of, because we have a history and long tradition of basically separating out those who are diplomats, that's why they don't count. Because you can also read the notes of the people who drafted like that amendment, and they say explicitly in there that these groups don't count.
Why are you writing so fucking hard, right, for like a goddamn wannabe like authoritarian? Like, dude, this is insane.
Wait, are you asking me?
This is just insane. Okay, here's like me and Matt being like, well, let's just go ahead and like read U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark. Let's read SCOTUS case law, right, from 1897. Let's read SCOTUS case law from 1987. Let's read federal court in their case law, right, with everybody that like ruled that this executive order was unconstitutional on the federal level after it was signed into law. Let's like literally go into the justice's footnotes, okay? Let's read, right, their description of what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means to know what the current interpretation is in SCOTUS, right? And even though we're doing all of this, right, like you're just still being like, nah, I don't want to buy it.
The court,
I'm going to go ahead.
Would you say packing the court
I'm gonna go
dictator
ahead.
or authoritarian?
I'm going to go ahead and just try this one last time. Okay.
Would you say that's authoritarian?
I'm not going to answer your question until we're done.
But you just said Donald Trump is an authoritarian leader, right. and we're trying to.
We could happily go through my reasons why I think that after this. Okay. So
but
we read. No, calm down, Cody. Greg, calm down, Greg. Okay. You remind me of this guy named Cody. He sucks. So do you. But listen. Okay. So now that we've read the footnotes from Justice Gray in U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark, when he says being subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Wait, can you just answer my question?
No. So
I've been speaking
No.
with you for like an hour.
no, I'm
Just-
not
just
going to do it.
please.
I'm not going to do it. Fuck
Wh-
you. Okay.
Why?
Why? Because we need
Adam
to go one
Schiff
topic
wants
at a
back the
time.
court, and Democrats are
hey, Greg.
authoritarian.
Hey,
That's why.
hey, Greg. Stop trying to pivot. You're scared. Listen. Okay.
No,
I need.
you
yes.
answer my question.
No.
Just answer
yes.
it and
Yes. Answer my question, Dean. Answer my question. Right. So you could try to get around what I'm about to say. Very cute. Sit down. All right.
No,
So
you're ignoring me.
no. Yeah. I am going to ignore you until we could finish at this point because we're so close. Okay. We're terribly close, Greg. We're not going to pivot now. Stop acting entitled. All right. Just sit down.
No,
Hear me out
not
for what I have to
entitled.
say.
Just asking
You're
a
acting
question.
incredibly. You literally
Supreme
think
Court
that
is
you are
authority.
entitled to pivot after me and Matt have poured our goddamn souls into trying to just simply educate you on this subject. And now that we're so fucking close to reaching a conclusion, you want to just ignore what we've put into this conversation to get ourselves to this point and completely
Oh,
change
I'm
the
just asking
topic.
you a simple
So
question.
Greg, right? I'm asking you a simple question that I'm not going to allow you to pivot away from. Sit the fuck down, please, for the last time, sir. Okay? Now that we've come to understand Justice Gray's footnotes and the U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark case, when he says being subject to the jurisdiction thereof is not more or less comprehensive than being within the jurisdiction thereof, right? And you agree undocumented immigrants are within the jurisdiction thereof, right? Given the fact that they qualify for equal protections. And that's not more or less comprehensive than being subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This means that they're also subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right?
No, I do not believe
Explain
that.
how. Given that it's not more or less comprehensive, and you agree that they're within the jurisdiction thereof.
Can you
per
just first
per
answer my
prior
question?
veto.
I mean, I have
No.
one question this entire time.
No, I'm not. I'm going to need you
Why-
to
why
answer
not?
this, right? Because I already told you I'm not going to entertain the pivot.
I'm not. It's not a pivot. It's a really simple question. If you think packing the Supreme
sir,
Court
if you don't think that that's
is
a pivot,
authoritarian,
if you
and you
don't-
don't want to answer it
if you,
because
if you
you're
don't, if you,
scared to answer it. Or
if you don't
something.
think
I don't
that,
know.
if you don't think that's a pivot, then you don't know what a pivot is, right? Like obviously,
so
right?
just
like,
why are you
like obviously, right? It's going to be a pivot, right, to change the subject when we're talking about, right, like very minuscule footnotes on like SCOTUS rulings to determine if undocumented immigrants have birthright citizenship to launch a conversation about if it's authoritarian to want to pack SCOTUS. Okay, that's an obvious pivot.
No, but you said you
not,
started.
You're not.
You first
You're not trying to. You're not going to convince anybody here. And if you're now going to accuse me of starting it because I said that Trump's an authoritarian, okay, well then I apologize for starting it. We could hold off about my comments of Trump being an authoritarian after we finish on this topic. My apologies one last time. All right. So now that we have cleared that up, go ahead and respond. Now that we've learned from Justice Gray in U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark that being within the subject to the jurisdiction thereof, being within the jurisdiction thereof is not more or less comprehensive than being subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and we know undocumented immigrants are within the jurisdiction thereof via Plyer v. Doe's ruling, does this mean that we therefore also know that they are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, given that it's not more or less comprehensive?
Okay, so because the Supreme Court has not ruled or has said that you can or cannot be within its jurisdiction, so the Supreme Court has not commented whether you can be within its jurisdiction and not be subject. If you can be in one or the other.
That comment is coming from Justice Gray saying that it's not more or less comprehensive.
No. He
Yes.
has not. He did not say that.
You
He
did.
did not say whether you can be within.
Yeah, he
a
did. He did. I thought that we went over this,
jurisdiction.
Matt. Do you want to read it again, where he's like, "It's not more comprehensive"?
Yeah. Impossible to construe the word subject to the jurisdiction thereof in the opening sentence of the 14th Amendment as less comprehensive than the words within its jurisdiction in the concluding sentence of the same section, or to hold that persons within the jurisdiction of one of the states of the Union are not also subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
If
you
they
get
were
it
the
now, buddy?
same, the wording in the 14th Amendment would be the same.
Okay, so do you want to respond to what Chief Justice Gray said?
I just did. I just responded. I don't believe that is a thing that defines. I don't believe what he said defines what within its jurisdiction and subject to its jurisdiction mean, and if they're exactly the same.
Okay,
I don't
well,
believe
you
that
said that
defines it.
it's not more comprehensive,
What does that mean?
right?
It means you can't give one less weight than the other.
Right.
Does it? But what is less weight?
It means that, for example, in Wong, they were saying that being subject is of lesser value than other things. And what he's saying is, no, it's not, because they both have an
it'd be
equal
of different value,
symbiosis
not
here,
lesser value.
where
So it
one
can't
is
be.
not less comprehensive than the other. because Justice Gray was going over the history of what the word jurisdiction means. He had to look at both of those phrases, both phrases in the opening section and in the end section. And he goes over what that means, which is why he concludes, by the way, that every citizen, quote, every citizen or subject of another country, while domiciled here, is within the allegiance and the protection and consequently subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. He says it point blank.
Oh my God, he does say it point blank. Any subject of another country, while domiciled here, right, are in allegiance and of protection and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Man, okay, now you're extra cooked.
Sorry, what did they say? Can you repeat
said-
what he said?
Sure. Justice Gray concludes that every citizen, quote, every citizen or subject of another country, while domiciled here, is within the allegiance and the protection and consequently subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
So every citizen or citizen of another country.
Yes.
Is that what he said?
Yes, every citizen or subject to another country while domiciled here, okay?
What does
while
while domicile here mean? I mean,
means that they live here. It means they have a place to live.
okay, so why isn't a foreign diplomat involved in that? A foreign diplomat has a place to live here. So why are they different? Is there an
Sure,
exception?
because Justice Gray says, based on history and tradition, and based on what the actual people who made the amendment said, they explicitly said that diplomats and children of diplomats do not count in this. He goes back to the original notes that was made by the founders and by those who drafted the 14th Amendment, and they explicitly say that there are certain people who do not qualify, and being a diplomat and being children of diplomats are one of those exclusions.
So are we now looking in the Constitution through an originalist point of view?
I
or-
didn't say that I disagree with that kind of thing. You have to look at what people said at the time when trying to figure out
But illegal immigrants
what these
didn't
words
exist
mean.
at that time. So how can
No, they did, because Wong would have been considered by our definition to be a undocumented immigrant.
No.
By our own definition.
Wait, by your own definition, it would have been a
At the
Wong would
yes,
have been
based on how we define what an undocumented based on how we define what an undocumented immigrant is.
What do you mean
Right.
based on how we
We would call the parents of Wong, they would be undocumented because they were not citizens,
That's not what
but they were here.
what do you mean? An undocumented immigrant is an illegal immigrant who doesn't have any right to be here in the United States. But
Yes. Yes.
a illegal immigrant
Still, the point goes.
Was
Still, the
a-
point goes that what Justice Gray was trying to clarify was simply meaning what does it mean. What does it mean to be subject? Because there was no dispute that Wong was born here in the United States. There was no dispute about that, right? Oh,
yeah, but
The only dispute
there was no
was whether he
illegal
was
immigrant. The dispute about whether she or her parents were legal or illegal was not questionable. It was legal. It even says that.
yes, because they were basing it on an act of Congress that did seek to exclude Chinese immigrants from the country, and so that's what made them illegal. Was because there was a law in place, a very racist law, by the way.
Are you
that-
arguing that Wong was an illegal immigrant? Is that what you're arguing right now?
No. They. Oh my God. I don't know how else to say this. The people who were saying that Wong was not a citizen were saying because of X, Y, and Z, this is what makes him a non-citizen. He was saying I was a citizen because I was born here and I was subject to that jurisdiction. And people in the chat, don't worry. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not upset by what people are saying. It doesn't matter. Okay, I understand.
Oh,
It's
they're-
fine.
They're talking about. I think they're talking about something else.
Oh, good. Okay. Good.
Yeah, it's being taken care of.
Okay, good.
What's happening?
Oh, don't worry about it. But Chad, it's
Oh, I see it. Okay, Dean. Yeah, thanks for that.
Just yeah, there's a lot of Nazi emojis in the chat. I don't know if that's anything.
dude.
Just ignore it.
Yeah.
But do you
Okay,
understand?
anyways.
But also too, I want to point this out. There are very few, and I've looked over all the case law. I've looked at the people who have given briefs on this. Right, there are very few law experts and very few historians who say that Wong is wrong, or that those who are born here and subject to and that subject to our jurisdiction of undocumented migrants are also not citizens. And that's why it's hard to find people who say that that is wrong. You can find them, but they're very, very limited because it's been such settled case law.
That yeah, but I'm sorry, I just can't get over like what you're arguing, because in the Wong case, once again, just because they were arguing against citizenship doesn't mean that they were arguing that Wong or her parents were illegal. Get over like just because they were parents were.
I know that, but in Wong, they were trying to make a case because there was an act of Congress that does not apply here. Because there was an act of Congress called the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was directly in play here. That's not like, and they were saying things about the Chinese that made it, very wrong in that case. All that I'm saying, okay, he's gone. All I'm saying here is that they gave us that definition of what subject means, and that's what we've been going with for the last 120 years. So,
Yeah, I just kicked him.
okay.
I don't know. It's like,
Hey, Dean, are you?
it's kind of like
He thought that was funny, I guess.
It's this interesting thing that we also saw on the guests before Greg, where it's like they believe in something very strongly. You know what I mean? They believe in it very strongly. They think that it's like super duper true. And then when there's like really compelling like evidence to demonstrate why they're wrong, they just reject it, right? Like, his premise was that like undocumented immigrants don't have birthright citizenship because we haven't had like SCOTUS explicitly rule on the merits of the qualifications for it and on if undocumented immigrants like apply, right? But then when we like give him that merit, when we give him like the ruling from SCOTUS to demonstrate that they've done exactly that, all of a sudden he doesn't care, right? Like we're able to like specifically quote like the Chief Justice of SCOTUS in 1897, where he ruled that, yeah, undocumented immigrants have this, right? Given the fact that he thinks anybody from another country that's domiciled in this country is subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof isn't any more complex, right, than within the jurisdiction thereof.
Yeah.
Right? Then like he just doesn't care, right? Because like what he's looking for is something that explicitly says undocumented immigrants have birthright citizenship from SCOTUS. All right? But like that's a very like unfair standard to hold here, because like SCOTUS has never explicitly said that he has birthright citizenship. All right? But the reason why it's an undeniable fact that he has birthright citizenship is because of the insurmountable, right, amount of case law and interpretation of the 14th to demonstrate exactly that. Like, not only is it what the framers intended, but it's also just what is agreed upon because of these SCOTUS rulings.